And now I'm going to leave to Ursula De Castro to introduce the workshop, and then Katie will start. So 1 second. Please, can you mute yourself? Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the last day of Fashion Open Studio. And I couldn't be happier to be introducing Katie Jones. Katie Jones makes me happy. She always has, from when I first met her at Estetica. We share a passion for crochet. We share a passion for color. She's probably my most reposted crocheter ever, whether it's her tiny little Easter egg or, you know, just her world of color and manuality and the person that she is, that you can totally see behind her brand. So she's also a very regular for us at Fashion Open Studio, so even nicer to see her. And I'm very, very proud that Katie is one of a handful of designers that call me their fashion mum. Katie, it's been such a pleasure to journey with you for all these years, and I couldn't be happier to have you at Fashion Open Studio.
Thank you
Good
so
luck
much.
with the event. I'm looking forward to.
Thank you. Yes, I'm very lucky to have Ursula as my fashion mum, and who opened my eyes when I first started to sort of sustainable fashion. And so today we're going to be making a crochet patch. So I'm just going to pin myself. So I should be.
You pin.
Ah, there you go. And I'll just let the last person in. So hello. I am Katie Jones, as Ursula said, and I am a crochet designer who fell into sustainability by accident. I was quite thrifty. I studied fashion, I think, 7 years. And when I studied, sustainability didn't really get mentioned at all, which is kind of horrendous, seeing as I was there for 7 years. But luckily, fashion studying and in universities and just in general day to day, it's not such a sort of mystery anymore with sustainability. But I was thrifty and I would upcycle pieces, and mainly because when I first started as a designer, yarn and materials were really expensive, and adding detail and making by hand, as any of you crafters will know, takes a really long time. So it was a way that I could speed up my process. So today we're going to be making these really little cute small crochet flowers, which are perfect for covering those pesky moth holes if you've got them. Number one tip though, before you make your pieces beautiful, if they've got moth holes, bung them in the freezer for 4 days first, because if it's wool or anything delicate, you can't wash it high enough to kill the larvae. But if you put it in a plastic bag in your freezer for 4 days, you'll kill them, and then you can decorate it and make it look beautiful. Otherwise you'll decorate it and they'll still keep eating it. So we're going to make these little crochet flowers, and I'm going to go through the basics, from the very basics. So I don't know in terms of how many people are here. We've got 69. If you're new to crochet or if you can already crochet, but I'm going to go through step by step. In the chat, I'm going to just add a handout. You don't have to look at it while you're following along, but it's for your reference when we finish. So let me just add, I mean, you can look at it while we're going. Where's it gone? I'll add it at the end because I can't find the button. So we're going to start from the very basics. So hopefully, if you're following along, you've got a crochet hook and some yarn. I'm going to be using 2 colors. You can do it in 1 color if you want. And I said I'm using like a double knit yarn and a size 4 hook, but really you can use whatever yarn you've got to match your like hook and yarn. And if you're not sure about that, rule of thumb, I mean, people's crochet tension can really sway. More than knitting, crochet can be really different with your tension. But I'm going to show, like, here's an example. Wait, is it going to zoom in? So with yarn, quite a lot of the time on the back, for the weight, it will tell you what size needle or hook to use. Generally, they always have knitting, but sometimes knitting and crochet sort of hook sizes aren't quite comparable. But on their website, they'll always also have the crochet hook size, so that will help. So rule of thumb with a double knit weight yarn, usually like a 3.5, 4 millimeter needle. If you're using sort of an Aran or a worsted yarn, you might want a sort of 4.5 to 5 millimeter needle hook. But that's sort of, for today, when we're doing our flower, it doesn't really matter. And so we're going to go step by step, and I'm going to change. I've got this camera in front of my face will show us the steps, so you'll get a close-up of my hands. Now I can see a few of you at a time with your cameras on, so what I will do is I will go through step by step, and then let me put you on gallery so I can see you all who's got their cameras on. I will go through step by step, and I will just pause every now and then to check in and see how you're doing. And what I will also do is you can use the chat if you've got any questions, or you want me to sort of pause or re-show something as we go. There's a reaction button sort of down the bottom that you can put like a hand up. Also, if you have anything that you want to say, and then that is fab. So we'll get started. So let me take you away from my face and we'll go here. There we go. So I'm using a 4 millimeter hook. I've got my scissors, and I've got two types of two colors of double knit. And so I'm going to do a yellow middle flower and a green petal, because it will stand out nice and strong against the background. So it should be nice and easy to follow. And first of all, we're going to start from the very basics. So with crochet, if you're new to crochet, really, it's all in your hands. Oh wait, what's this? Oh, in the chat, sorry, let me see. Yes, I'm trying to, let me drag it into the chat. I will put it in.
Katie, unfortunately, I can't share it because it needs to be on the Google Drive. So I'm not so sure if you got it on the Google Drive. Otherwise, it doesn't really upload anything directly from the computer. So if that's an issue, we can share it at the end of the workshop, everyone by email.
Brilliant. Sorry about that. So no, I'll go through it and then you'll have a reference as we go. So also, just let me go back to my face for 1 second so we can go through that. The tricky thing with crochet, if you're new to it, it's quite a lot of the time the terminology. So I will go through it really slowly. And what can be quite confusing is UK stitches and US stitches use the same words but mean different stitches. And that's the thing that can kind of really trick you up early on when you're starting to learn to crochet if the pattern doesn't state. So I will use UK terms and I will go through how we do the stitches. And on the handout, I've also put in brackets the US terms, because also if you've sort of been teaching yourself via YouTube or looking at anything like that, quite a lot of the time US stitches are used. But that's like the first, when you're first learning, that's the sort of, that's the first thing that we can do. Oh, 1 second, Felipe's going to screen share my PDF at the same time. So we can share that. Yes, please, Felipe, that would be great. So if you can slide your zoom bar across so you kind of get half my face, half worksheet if you want, or you can slide me all the way across if you don't want the worksheet. So let's start from the very basics, and we're going to go from how to hold your hook. So you can hold your hook like a knife or like a pen, And it's whatever feels more comfortable when you're starting. I generally hold mine like a pen, but you can also grip it like a knife. Also, in the chat, have we got many left-handers? Because I can go through both if you are left-handed. No one's put in the chat yet. But a few left-handers. So I will show you with both. My left-handed, when I do it, because I'm not naturally left-handed, might be a little bit different, but we'll go through it. And all that's different when you're left-handed is when we're right-handed, we'll work it anti-clockwise, and if you're left-handed, you'll work clockwise when you work. So we'll go through both of those. So I'm going to take my yarn, and we're going to start off by doing a slip knot, and that is how we put our yarn onto our hook. If you're a knitter, it's the same type of knot, but the best way I can describe it is if you take your yarn and I'm going to always, the end bit I'll refer to as the tail. You sort of loop it round like to make a small E, and then you come through the middle, you grab where your tail is. If you hold that tail so it can't disappear and you pull, you'll get a knot. Sometimes they're called a magician's knot because if you pull it, it disappears. So it comes undone. So this is the knot we start off. So I'll start again. So yarn, bring round like a small E, come through the middle of that loop, grab your tail, don't let that go through, put it on your hook, like make it a bit smaller. And the first step I would say is this goes on your hook and you want to pull it, but don't pull it so tight, because when you start to pull it really tight, it makes it really hard to come off of your hook for the first stitch. And so with crochet, if you're new to crochet, holding your yarn and holding your hook are really the trickiest thing I think to learn. And if you're new, I always suggest we're going to learn how to do a chain stitch. And I always say, put on your favorite TV program, put on your favorite radio show, and just do a chain for a couple of hours, undo it, redo it, because the minute your hands feel like autopilot, it makes it so much easier. So we've got our knot on our hook, and we're holding our hook. In your hand, we want to try and get your tension. So I'm going to do the right-handed first, and then I'll do left-handed. So we come, here's your palm. I go over my palm. I pinch in my two fingers, a bit like a toy gun. I come round the back of my fingers, and I use my thumb and my finger to make sort of a shadow puppet bunny handhold. And this is what pinches this bit of tail. So all my yarn is in my left hand. And basically the reason why I make this sort of shadow puppet bunny sound is I've got this piece that's tight here. And this is what we'll use when we're crocheting. We'll hook into here, and that's what helps you get a really smooth movement. And so you can hold it a few different ways, but I would say, because sometimes people, if you prefer pinching with your middle finger, then you would stick this one, but you want to have one finger that basically works like an antenna, because this gives you like a nice area of tension, and it means when you're crocheting, you can get a really smooth movement. So I'm just going to go through my left hand. Let me just remember which way I pinch it. So as I'm not naturally left-handed, this is how I hold it, and you might find slightly easier grip, but I come in, I pinch again with these two fingers, I come over, and I find in my left hand, I find it easier to pinch with my middle finger and my thumb, and I raise, I think that's your index finger, I raise my index finger to get my smooth movement here. So I'll just go through that again. So palm out, over those two bottom fingers. And when you're holding your tension, you just want to hold it lightly. Don't pinch too hard, you'll get instant hand cramps. So just like smoothly over my thumb and my forefinger, I pinch the yarn here. And so I've got this area to work with. And the reason you want this area to work with is when we're going to come and do our chain stitch, you use that to hook, and you get the hook to do the work for you. So I'll start off as I've got my left hand hold here. We're going to just practice the chain before we go straight on into our little flower. So with your hook, you come over the yarn, and can you see that hook? I just twist my hook down and it catches. And so then it means I can smoothly pull it through the loop. So come in, twist, pull it through. In, twist, whoop, with my left hand, pull it through. And then you want the most control. So then you jump your hold up, and you have most control the closer to the loop and your hook that you hold. That gives you a hold. So I'm going to go back to my right hand. And it doesn't matter right now how many chain stitches you're doing. We're just going to do this to practice. So I'll put my hand hold in again. So I go over my 2 fingers, pinch down, round the back of my hand, and I use my thumb and my forefinger to pinch very close to where my needle is, get my tension. So it's smooth here, not really tight, so you don't overly cramp your hand, but smooth. And then we use our hook and we go over the yarn, twist round, and so the hook does the work for you. So you get it stuck in that bit of the hook, and then you can pull it through your stitch smoothly. So it really means that rather than having to move your arm so much, the hook does the work for you. So you go round, twist down, and pull through. And this is a chain stitch. So you go round and pull through. And when you're making chain stitches, they look like little V's. I'm trying to see where it will get in focus. They look like little V's. And when you're counting them, you never count the stitch on your hook. So you only count the stitches that are off of your hook when we're counting. But I'm just going to do a few more to get that movement. And you can see when I'm doing it, I'm not moving my hands hugely, but I'm getting the needle to do most of the work. And like I said, if you're new to crochet, getting this hand hold and getting the movement and sort of your tension is really, I would say, the hardest part. And I always think when you first learn, there's a sort of click moment after about 2 weeks where then it feels more natural. And quite a lot of time when you're first learning to crochet, you might think that you're doing something wrong, but actually it's just that your tension is a bit wobbly. And so sometimes it can just not look right. So I would say, like, after today, if you like crochet, or, you know, sometimes it can feel really a bit, you know, bit funny in your hands at start because we're not used to sort of holding our fingers in so many different positions at once. Just really practice that chain and then come back to sort of trying, because it's so much easier to get your hands into autopilot before you're trying to learn so many other stitches. So that's my little bit of chain, and I'm going to take my hook out and I'm just going to undo everything that I did. And this is the thing with crochet, if you haven't fastened it and you take your hook out, if you pull it, it will all unravel. So it makes undoing work really easy, but you always have to be very careful if you're crocheting on the sofa and then you get up to make yourself a cup of tea and it's attached to you and you accidentally undo about, you know, 2 hours work in 3 steps, which is always a bit upsetting. So I'm now going to start from the basic and do, when you're working in crochet, the first sort of row you do is normally called your foundation row. So that's how we're going to start. And I'm going to start by making this inner little circle. And what it is using is we're going to do the first bit and we're working into a loop. And then I'm going to go through and teach you how to do a treble stitch, which is in UK terms, or a double crochet in US terms. So we'll go through that bit. So I'm starting off in yellow. I'm going to take my yarn and I'm going to do my slip knot again. So I do my small E, come through, grab the loop, pull it, and then we're going to put that on our hook and pull, but not too tight. If it's really tight, you'll find it really hard to get that first loop out. So I'm going to put it on my hands, and then with my thumb and my forefinger, I'm going to pinch, and we're going to do a chain of 4. So the first bit is started off with 4. If you are a crocheter, you could also use a magic loop. I personally hate magic loops. If you don't know what they are, we won't be using it today, so it doesn't matter. But I never learned using them, so I generally don't use them very much. But if you're already a crocheter, you might want to use a magic loop. So I'm going to do 4 stitches. So like I said, we don't count the one on our hook. So we're going to go round our yarn, twist down, pull through, first stitch, round our yarn, twist down, pull through, second stitch, round our yarn, twist down, pull through, third stitch, and we've got one more. So round our yarn, twist down, pull through, 4. So we've got a little chain of 4, and then we're going to make this into a loop. So we take our hook and we go through the very first stitch that we did. So you put it on and you'll get like a little U shape on your hook. And then hopefully at the beginning, you'll drop your yarn and you'll forget your handhold immediately. It doesn't matter. We'll just do it any way that it works right now. So what always helps is to hold your work, because that gives you some tension and it's easier to control on your hook. So once we've got our 4 chains and we've got them like a little loop on our hook, we're going to do a slip stitch. So a slip stitch is where you generally use to join work, or sometimes used for top detail. And if you know American terms, US terms, a slip stitch is the same in both. So that's an easy one. So with a slip stitch, we've got our yarn, and it's really like doing a chain stitch, but pulling through these 2 loops. So at the moment, we should have 2 loops on our hook, and we're going to go round our yarn and pull through both loops at once that are on our hook. And hopefully you should make a little donut. So that's going through and pulling through both of them. So I'll do that bit again. So we've got our 4 chain, we go through that first stitch, then we wrap around our hook, so yarn over the hook. And when we're pulling through, just remember to let your hook do the work. The reason we want that tight part here is because then when we twist our hook, the yarn doesn't slip off and it's sort of stuck on that hook. And it means you can rotate the hook end down slightly, and it means that you can then really smoothly pull through your stitches. And so just get used to rotating that hook, just twisting it round and having that tension to keep it smooth. So that here, and on the worksheet that you can look at afterwards, this is your foundation chain. So this is your foundation loop, and this little donut is the center, the very center, which we're going to be working into. So with this pattern, it's only 2 rounds, but it will help you sort of understand working in the round if you haven't worked in crochet before. So we're making rounds where we'll go round. And the thing with working with crochet is we've got this little donut, but we now need to get the height out before we start doing our stitches. So you're going to want to chain 3 more stitches now it's joined. So we go round 1, 2, 3, and then you should have what looks a little bit like a tadpole. So you've got your central loop, and then you've got a chain of 3. And that chain of 3 in our next bit of our pattern basically works as a fake treble, because we need to get the height out of the work to carry on the next stitches. So we've got that, and now I'm going to teach you how to do a treble, or in US terms, it's a double crochet. So it's a longer stitch, it's got more height. And a treble is what's worked in quite a lot of crochet to get, if you know, like granny squares, or when I come back on the collar that I'm wearing has got lots of trebles in, and it's a longer stitch. So with a treble, there's a few more stages to it, or a US double crochet. So you've got your handhold and you've got your yarn on your hook. You're going to wrap around your hook once, so you have an extra loop on your hook. And then with your hook, and this is where your handhold kind of becomes important, because if you let go of your work a lot, you kind of lose where you're going. Whereas if you try and keep your pinch here for this next stage, at the bottom of your donut, you'll always know where you're going into and what's the front and the back. So try not to let go with your left hand, or if you're left-handed, try not to let go of your yarn, because this will help you keep in the same direction. So for those of you who already crochet, I'm now going to do 11 trebles into this ring, or 11 double crochets if you know US terms. But for those of you that are learning, we're going to do our first treble. So I've wrapped around my hook, so I've got that extra loop, and then I'm going to go into that middle of that donut from the front, and we're going to come all the way in, and I'm going to take my hook and I'm just going to hook that yarn to pull it forward, and I bring it through to the front. And then on your hook, you should see that you basically have 3 loops. And once you have 3 loops, we're going to work to finish our stitch. So once you've got 3 loops on your hook, you wrap around your hook again. So you yarn over is what it's normally called. And then you're going to just pull through those first 2 of the loops. So not through everything, the first 2. And you're left with 2 loops on your hook. And then you wrap around and you pull through the next 2. And that completes 1 treble. So you can see it's like the same height as the chain. And that chain we did earlier basically masquerades as a fake treble in our trebles. So I'm going to do another one. So I wrap round my hook into the middle of that donut from the front, grab the yarn from the back, pull it through to the right side. I've got 3 loops on my hook, wrap around, pull through. Oh, who's that? Did someone have a question? Okay. So then I've got 2 loops on my hook and I wrap around and I pull through those 2. And so you can see it's not mirrored on this actually. So you can see I'm working anti-clockwise. If you're left-handed, work with yourself. So you'll be working clockwise, fulfilling like completing the loop. So we're making 11 trebles. So actually then when we go to count it, it will look like 12. So we want to put 11 trebles into this central donut. So I'm going to do another one. So I wrap round, through the middle, pull through the front. I've got 3, wrap, pull through 2, wrap, pull through 2. Wrap round my hook, through the middle, grab, pull through, wrap, pull through 2, wrap, pull through 2. With crochet, if you mess something up, don't worry too much. You can take your hook out and just pull very lightly back to where you think that your stitch is still fine, and then you can put your hook back in. So if you're a knitter, you'll see that sort of undoing and redoing crochet work, it's a lot, I suppose, easier because you don't drop stitches so in the same way. So I'm going to put...
Katie, someone is asking, lost the at the crucial moment, would you repeat? But I'm not so sure what is the crucial moment. So Sue,
That's
if you
fine, I will go through the steps. So we're doing our treble, which is an American double crochet. And for that, it's in a few steps. So we've got our hook, our loop on our hook, and you wrap around your hook. So you have 1 wrap first, then you go into the donut, the loop from the front, you hook the yarn from the back, you pull through, you will have 3 loops that you can see on your hook. And then the rule of thumb is you're going to combine 2 together at a time. So you wrap around your hook and pull through the first 2, and you're left with 2, and then you wrap around your hook and you pull through the last 2, and then you finished your treble. So we want 11 of those. So I go round into the donut, pull through 3 loops, wrap, pull through 2, wrap, pull through 2. And then what you can do, because I've completely lost count of how many I've got, is you can, I always find you can either count the little V's along the edge, but I always sort of count in between the posts, and these you would either call a treble post, or if you're using US terms, a double crochet post, and I can count. So I'm going to count my chain as 1, because I want a total of 12 when I finish. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And so I'm just going to do the rest to complete that round. So another treble, and I'll do this bit fast. Another treble. I've lost count again. I'm a terrible counter, which is always bad when you're sort of crochet, but I fell in love with crochet because I was quite a terrible counter at knitting, where it mattered a lot more. And crochet, you can be a little bit more slapdash, or you can count at the end and figure it out. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I've got 1 more to make 12. And so I counted, I've done 11 trebles, and then I've counted 12 because I count that chain as a fake treble. So I can do, oh, you can also click, let me, I can help. Someone was saying I wasn't so big. So I can make myself spotlight, I think, which means you have to see me big. There you go. I hope that helped. Brilliant. Okay. So I will do 1 more treble. I'll undo 1 and do 1 more then, so you can see clearly. So your treble is you wrap round, you go in from the front, through to the back, hook your yarn, pull it through to the front. You've got 3 loops, wrap around, pull through 2, wrap around, pull through 2. And so you can see now we've got most of our middle, and we're just going to join it to make a complete round. So where we join it, on yours, I don't know how focused it is, you can see, but you've got your first chain of 3. We want to join it at the top of that. So you're going to count into the 3rd stitch. So I always use my hook as a sort of pointer. So it's 1 stitch, 2 stitch, 3 at the top. And with my hook, I'm going to slip stitch join these. So I go through the stitch at the top, and I grab, and with our slip stitch, remember it's you're pulling through everything at once to join it. So I grab it, I pull through that first loop, and I pull through that second loop. And then you should have your little polka dot to start off with, really. And so then when we fasten off, how I fasten off is I always wrap around my hook, pull through, and then I would take my scissors, and with crochet just always give yourself a bit of a tail, pull through that, and that fasten off, and that gives you a complete little spot donut. And before you fasten off, this is where you want to always double check that you've got those 12 posts. Before you cut your yarn, always just check your numbers, and especially when you're working in motifs where they're going to be sort of work and add up in multiples, it's always best to just check your numbers every row. Sort of, I kind of end up making these a bit with my eyes closed, but I still after every first row, I always check, because the minute you do your second row and it doesn't add up, it will get incredibly annoying when you're trying to fit it in. So that is your spot. And then I'm going to take my second colour to join in for our petals. Does anyone have any questions about that before I move on to the second row? Let me just check. I don't think so. For my left-handers, do I need to go through any of the handhold again? No. I can go through it again at the end if anyone else wants me to show that bit. So we're going to take our second colour. So I've got this, and then that's okay if you're still working on. I'll go on to the second row and I'll recap everything. And like I said, you'll get the worksheet, which has got step by step as well, so you can keep up. So I'm going to take my second colour, and I'm going to start by putting my yarn onto my hook. So I'm doing the same process. So I'm making a little E, taking my yarn, grabbing it, making my loop and putting that on my hook. And then we're going to join in to our first piece. So we're now working onto row 2, and we're working in our second colour. You might be carrying on in the same colour, that's fine. And we're going to do what is called a double crochet join. If you're used to, and so if you are used to American patterns, double crochet is always the red flag, or like single crochet when you know it's the only stitch that is different. So in American crochet terms, they have a single crochet, which in UK crochet terms we don't have. So if you ever see a single crochet in a pattern, you know it's a US pattern. And so sometimes that's how you'll know. So we're going to start off by taking our little first round. And if you look at it, you can see that there's these little V's all around the edge. And we're going to join in with our yarns on our hook already. And it doesn't matter which one we join in. You're going to go under the 2 loops of one of those V's. So that's working into the top of the stitch. So we just join that onto our hook under the 2 loops. And so you want to grab your yarn hold again. And when we start off, you'll be pinching this first round to hold. And once we've combined it and we've joined it in, it's a little bit easier to hold. So we come in and we're joining in as a double crochet. So we come in and we grab the yarn from the back. We pull through to the front and you'll have 2 loops on your hook. And then you'll wrap around your hook and you'll pull through those 2 loops. And that is a double crochet or a single crochet in US terms. And it's like you're repeating the same motion as the treble, it's just smaller. It's a shorter, denser stitch. So we're now going to combine some of the stitches we learned in that first round to make our first petal section. Bit here. So we're going to want to get our height again. You see, like we need to come out from our middle piece to get our height. So we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And once we've got that height, we're going to make our petals. And to make our petals, and when you're working in a circle, when it has to get bigger, we end up putting more than 1 stitch in each hole. And that's how it gets bigger. So with your first round, who said that, you just need to join into that 3rd stitch at the top. So let me add that in again in 1 second. Let me come back a tiny bit. I'll undo my bit. So if you're joining in on that first round, you should have 12 stitches, so 11 trebles and that first chain. You count up to the 3rd stitch, so we've got 1 stitch, 2 stitch, 3 stitch, and in that 3rd stitch we're going to join with a slip stitch like we did with the foundation. So you go through the middle of that stitch, so you've got 2 loops, wrap around and then pull through both. And then to make it secure, once you've got that loop on there, wrap around and pull through. And I've already cut my yarn, but this is where then you cut it and you pull through. So let me join this next one in again. So I've got my yarn on my hook. I'm going to join into that stitch by going under 2 of the little loops, grab, pull through, so I've got 2 loops on my hook, wrap around and pull through 2. So like with the treble, you're always sort of combining 2 when you've got 2 on your hook, but it's just shorter. So we're going to get the height. So we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and there I am, back to where I was. So in this very stitch, the same hole that we've worked in, we're now going to do 2 trebles into that same stitch. So you wrap around your hook, into the stitch from the front, through to the back, grab your yarn, pull it through, you've got your 3 loops, wrap around, pull through 2, wrap around, pull through 2. Then you wrap around your hook again for your second treble. So you've wrapped, you go back into that same stitch. So we're working everything into that same stitch space, through, pull through to the front. So you've got 3 on your hook, wrap, pull through 2, wrap, pull through 2. So you can now see we've got sort of the beginning of a first sort of petal cluster. And then before we come out again, we need to work back down. So we do the same. You want to chain 3, 1, 2, 3. And then with this, you're going to join it back into that same stitch. So all of these so far have been worked into the same stitch, and we're going to join it with a double crochet. So that is, you go in the hole from the front, grab the yarn from the back, you've got 2 loops on your hook, you wrap and pull through both. And that gives you your first petal. So before we start the next one, in the next stitch, which you can see is like the next, under the 2 next V's next to you, the next gap, we're going to do 1 double crochet, which in American terms is a single crochet. And so we go into that stitch, so under those 2 V's, hook the yarn from the back, pull it through to the front. You've got 2 loops on your hook, wrap around your hook and pull through those 2. And that's creating a double crochet, or in US terms, a single crochet. And so now we're going to start our next petal. So our next petal starts off by, in the next stitch, we're going to do a double crochet again to anchor it down. So into the next stitch, hook through the stitch, hook the yarn, pull through to the front, wrap around and pull through both. Then we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3 to get our height. We're going to do 2 trebles. So wrap around, and we're working again all into that same stitch. So wrap around into that stitch, pull through, so you've got the 3. So for the stitches, it is, give me 1 second because I will do it like this. Let me put the instruction in the chat as well, because that will help. So for your second round, in the chat, that's the whole round instruction. So after you've done the petal and you've joined it with 1 double crochet, and then you go, yes, the recording will be able to be watched afterwards as well. So you join it with a double crochet. Let me get back to that point. And then what you do is the petals have 1 double crochet in between each other, so in the gap. So the next stitch you've joined with a double crochet, we do 1 more double crochet in the next stitch. And then we're about to start the next petal, and the next petal starts with a double crochet. So you'll do a double crochet in the following stitch, the next stitch. And then we'll go back to chaining 3, 1, 2, 3, 2 trebles. So wrap once into the same stitch. So that's my first treble. I'm going to do my second treble. And then I'm going to do my chain of 3 to get back down into that stitch. So 1, 2, 3. We come back down and double crochet in that same stitch to anchor it. And you can see now I've got my second petal. And so again, in the gap, there's 1 double crochet space. So in the next stitch, you do a double crochet. And then we're going to start our next petal. So that starts with a double crochet in that next stitch, and everything now is worked into that same stitch. So we're going to go 3 chain, 1, 2, 3, 2 trebles, 1 treble, or double crochets in US, 2 treble, 3 chain, 1, 2, 3, double crochet back in that same stitch to finish that petal. So I've got my third petal, and now we're going to double crochet in the next stitch for the space, and we're going to begin my fourth petal. So in this following space, I'm going to do 1 double crochet, 3 chains, 1, 2, 3, 2 trebles, 1 treble, 2 trebles, 3 chains, 1, 2, 3, and then double crochet back into that same stitch. And that's me on my fourth. And then I'm going to work into the next one. So if you're new, don't worry if you're not keeping pace, but what you'll find is if you get that first petal down, you just want that double crochet space in between, and then you're just repeating it. And because this is only a 2 round pattern, it's quite small. So you can, if it's not perfect, just take it out, undo it, and start going back to it. So I'm just going to do my next petal, and they have 6 petals. I had to double check with my counting then. So hopefully you should have a multiple, like you should have 6 petals if you're completing it. So I'm going to do my next one. So I've got my double crochet space, and in my next stitch I'm going to work, for me I'm on my 5th petal, so I double crochet into that stitch. I do 3 chain, 1, 2, 3, I wrap around my hook, I go back into that same stitch, 1 treble, the yarn's got caught, my second treble, so wrap around in, pull through, wrap, pull through 2, wrap, pull through 2, and then my chain, so 1, 2, 3. And the tip with your petals is just remembering you need that chain at the beginning to get that height, and then you need the chain after the 2 trebles to get the sort of, to be able to work back down. And then I double crochet to anchor it, and now I'm working my last petal. So I double crochet into the next stitch, and then I'm going into my petal, so double crochet. For me, I'm now going over my join. Don't worry when you're going over your join, sometimes it feels a little bit chunky, just try and get in the right part of the stitch. And so I've got the first bit of my petal, which is my double crochet. I'm going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, wrap around my hook, go back into that same stitch, wrap, pull through 2, wrap, pull through 2, my second treble into that same stitch. This one's a little tight because it's my join stitch, wrap, pull through 2, wrap, pull 2. So I'm on my last chain of 3, 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to anchor it with my double crochet. And then hopefully, if you've got the maths right, which this is always the moment of truth, I've got one more stitch here to do a double crochet into. And then to finish my round, I just need to attach it to that first stitch. So with this one, because we're joining around the base, in that first double crochet that we did, that very first stitch, I'm going to, with my hook, stab through the middle of it. So it's on my hook, and I'm going to do a slip stitch to join. So I grab it, pull it through that first one, pull it through that second. And now, depending on how you're going to use your flower, so that's got my flower attached as it is. If you're going to use your flower to sew onto a knit or a thicker jumper, you can use your tail as your thread to sew it on. So if you want to sew this onto something using this, you'll want to give yourself a nice long bit before you snip. And just remember, like I said, when the first one, if my loop's on here, I've snipped my yarn and I do an extra stitch and then pull that all the way through to secure. You give that a bit of a tug and it makes your knot secure. If you're going to sew this as a little patch onto something finer, then where you'll probably use like a cotton thread, you don't need so much length. But if you're using this to sew onto something, especially if you wanted to make multiple colour ones, it's quite good to cut yourself a nice long length, which then you can thread up and use the same yarn to sew round the edge onto your piece. And that completes my little flower. So it's 2 rows. Is there any part of that which anyone would like me to re-go over? Like we said, there'll be the handout and you'll be able to re-watch the recording. But if there's any part of that which would be helpful to go over. The last loop. Oh, like fixing it? Rebecca, is that right? Joining that last bit? Yes, I will do that. Let me unpick mine. So, and then I will take any questions at the end because I think we've got 5 minutes. So with that last stitch, we're doing our slip stitch. So in that first petal, we go through and it's really as simple as stab through that first stitch. It's not very delicate, but through that first stitch that we joined it with. And we're doing a slip stitch. So you grab the yarn from the back, pull it through that one on our hook to join it, and then wrap it round and pull through both, and it's joined. Yes, I do have a YouTube channel and that joins it in there. Let me switch back to my face while we go through any of the last bits so I can see you all as well. Thank you. So then, like I said, like keep a really long tail if you want to join it onto anything that's like knitted, if it's thicker, and you can join it and just stitch around the edge. And if you keep that long tail, it means that your it will match and go in. Now with crochet, usually you have to sew in all your ends. If it's going to be a patch and you're not going to see the back, I would cheekily just tie your ends together and give them a snip to join them. Or you have to weave them in the back. If you're going to use it and it's going to be loose, then you have to weave it in the back. But if not, you can just tie them and give them a snip. I'm always, I'd say, a little bit slapdash with my ends. Don't cut them too close to your knot, but you can give them a good double knot and then trim them because it's going to be sewn on something anyway. For the flowers, so also, like I said, if you're signed up to this, you will get a handout. Yeah, you can sew these on anything, and they make, like, you know, you might want to cover a hole or a stain, or you just might want to make something really decorative and colourful, and you could make hundreds using all your odds and ends and sew them onto anything you've got, really. So what you can do if your hole is too big in the middle of your flower, because I didn't do a magic loop, where you've got your tail, if you sew it through the hole and give it a pull, it will suck it in and make it nice and small. When I'm crocheting, I sort of crochet into the donut but go over that tail, and it means I can use it like a drawstring to make it small, but that will help it go small. So like I said, if you've signed up, you will get, the recording will be on the Fashion Revolution YouTube channel, and there is a handout. If you are on Instagram, I also have the instructions on Instagram, the that you can follow. I have a YouTube channel, and there's also other videos I've done which are linked there. There's some other stuff from Fashion Revolution that's on there too. And I'll be adding lots more videos. But for me, the main thing is I try, and I've got sort of on my website, there's a blog and there's some free patterns. And then I also publish patterns as well. And my main thing is making patterns accessible for everybody. So I am someone who is super dyslexic, got into crochet because I could follow my mum or my gran, and I would learn by doing. And I found traditional patterns horrible to read. Learning crochet, like to read crochet, is like a whole other language. And so I really try and make patterns accessible to everyone. So I use a lot of photos, step by steps, and I'm starting to do a lot more videos that will go along with things. And on my Instagram, there's some how-tos. There's also, if you're new to crochet, at the beginning of lockdown last year, as a bit of fun, I did a sort of quarantine cal, and I did a week of video every week, and that's on my blog, and that you can catch up on, and that's taking you through sort of from the basics, the granny square, learning different techniques, and it will go through all of that. And so that's another resource that you can use. I'm trying to keep up with the chat. Oh, thank you. I think we've got like 2 minutes if there's any sort of questions. I think for me, I fell in love with crochet when I was younger, and for me, I think as a way of being sort of sustainable, and when you learn to craft, you realize how, like, there's no crochet machine. So you get knit machines that can reproduce knit, but anything that is sort of crocheted, or like the granny square motifs that are really popular, there's no machine that does that. So that is done by hand, and that features in high street a lot and terrifies me a lot, because it's normally not very expensive, and when you learn to craft and crochet, you realize how long it takes. And so I originally had a women's wear brand and I sold pieces, but I love crafting and I love the craft community, and I love making things with people and that they can make it perfect for them. And so about 4 years ago, I sort of transitioned into making patterns and running workshops, because I think it's a really amazing skill to share. And also it means you can make, it makes luxury fashion accessible for everyone, because I handmade everything. It made the price point incredibly high at retail. And then this way, doing patterns, it means that everyone can engage, and you can pick what yarns you want to use, you can pick your colors, and you can join in. So that's sort of where I fell in love with crochet, and basically making luxury fashion open source, so everybody could get involved. And I'm really, really lucky to have been involved with Fashion Revolution sort of from the beginning, and it really opened my eyes, because like I said, when I came into sort of fashion, I loved handcraft, and I loved making, but I don't think I'd really thought about all the other bits. And when I started my brand, I started learning about markup and the true price of things and trying to cost things, and I think so much sort of opened my eyes that then I sort of slipped into sustainability. And I think once you know all the facts, you can't unknow. And I think, what's someone asking? So the cal is old, so you don't have to feel like the cal that's on the website, you don't have to feel any pressure with it. You can take those videos at your own pace. Yes, so on the Fashion Revolution and Fashion Open Studios, all the videos will be uploaded, so you can dip in and watch all of the amazing
just to enter this here. So Katie, thank you so much. Yes, we're publishing on Fashion Revolution YouTube channel, which is @Fashion Revolution. Give us a bit of time. It's Sunday. Most of the team is not working today. So it might not come straight away today, maybe tomorrow, but anyway. And then also we will forward an email to everyone that has been participating, and also to the one that have not participated today, but have subscribed to the event, with the link and also the little PDF that Katie has shared with all. I think we need to close now because although we're not starting on Zoom, but we have another event. I will share the link in case someone of you want to jump in. That's the next event today for Fashion Open Studio. And again, thank you, Katie.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And if anyone has any questions or like they're stuck on anything, you can send me an email through my website or a DM through Instagram. And I'm happy to help.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. Join us for the rest of the day. Katie, thank you so much. And I see you very soon, hopefully. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Bye.